All right, we are recording. I am Casper.
I'm Anna.
And we are stumbling along the universe, which is the new title to this podcast. And
working title
or non-working title in relation to the topic of today.
That's a good intro.
Yeah, so this is a podcast where we talk about a lot of things that we care about and are excited about, and sometimes know absolutely nothing about, but love talking about. And yeah, we have a lot of shared work that we do and shared audience, and we keep getting requests of, hey, why don't you guys do a podcast? So then we were like, hey, why don't we do a podcast? And that's what we're doing now. And this is, I think, the third episode. We did 2 sort of test pilot episodes, and we enjoyed it so much that we decided to make it formal. And we're going to theme the podcast and try to zone in on a specific topic with every episode. And the theme that we have chosen today is the tension field between inactivity and activity, the tension field between contemplation and performance, or more directed, why the fuck are we always so stressed about work?
And being productive.
Yeah, and not just we as you and I, but us as a society as a whole. And I think there's some really strong foundations to that societally, why we have been sort of raised to believe in productivity as the highest attainable good, and that you and I, or at least I can speak for myself, that I have been sort of getting disillusioned about that I'm realizing, okay, so how many to-dos should I finish? How much more should I optimize my life and every moment of the day? How much productivity should I attain until I can finally just relax and be happy? And then my current research question is, what if it's none at all? What if I don't have to finish anything to be happy? What do you think, Anna?
What if you're happy if you don't finish anything?
Yeah. Well,
not very happy, given the way that we're conditioned, but...
Yeah, so, and that's, I think, a very interesting thing. There's this difference between the happiness that you feel as like a fleeting moment, which is more like an inner reward for having done something that you believe you should be doing. And then there's the kind of happiness that is this foundational layer of existence almost, that, you knew as a child when you were just sitting back and watching the clouds go by, or watching, the autumn leaves turn brown, or just kind of finding a random, like we see our kids do, they find like a random pine cone, and they it's not like it makes them happy. It's like finding the pine cone is an expression of their happiness, and the way they see it is an expression of their happiness, and it makes them even happier to find it,
And I don't know whether productivity and happiness are really so interlinked. It's probably satisfaction, kind of this feeling of like, okay, it's done. And I think to some degree that's ingrained in us as humans, because I believe, at least to a certain extent, we're hardwired to also enjoy order and to enjoy having something. You can even see it in the kids. Sometimes there's something they need to finish before something else can happen, or sometimes they're obsessive about collecting as many pine cones as they can and filling the bucket, things like this. But it has to be in balance.
Yeah, and I think also one very important thing there is that there's a moment when it's finished. And an ability to just leave behind what is finished. Go like, oh, now I've done this little project. So you get like a sense of like, oh, I want to do something, like this itch that you have inside yourself. And then you go out to do something about it in the world to kind of scratch that itch. And, whether it's filling the bucket full of pine cones as a kid, or, writing a book, or making art, or doing your work, or, setting a clear goal to achieve for yourself. And then I think where in my personal life, it often goes sub-ideal, or in society in general, is this feeling of it never being done. So you get the little dopamine hit for having finished something, and then you instantly go, oh, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? And I
think that's a bit of a human fallacy in general, which keeps us moving as a race also, which keeps us excited about looking behind the next corner. And this is also what, to a great extent, I believe, has led us to progress this far. And not to say that all the progress that we've made is necessarily positive, but I think there's definitely that innate drive that we have of like, wanting to come to the next level, exploring more, like what's behind this corner, what's up in the stars, where is this universe expanding into? But at the same time, it also gives us a sense of restlessness. And I believe, especially in our modern society, where life in general moves so much faster and where there's so much more possible because of the technology that we're working with day to day, there's no cap on it. Because in the past, I think we spoke about this a couple of days ago, there would be many, many things that you might wonder about and might want to find out about and might want to explore, but you would know this is something that I will never be able to. For example, where do the birds go to when they leave at the beginning of winter or in autumn? You might have that question in your head, but you know that you're most likely never going to find an answer to this. And there's also something soothing to that, so it keeps the mystery alive. It humbles you. Whereas in our modern world, I think we're also almost made to believe that we can find the answers to everything. We can sort of decode the universe if only we're supposed to, and if only we try hard enough, or we put our best efforts to it, then it can be done. And I think, and this is of course a very abstract question, but I think in many ways we don't really have that natural cap or limit anymore of just kind of knowing like, oh, but there's a greater mystery at play, and at some point I'm just going to reach so the limits of my potential, or the potential of what can be done, what can be found out, what can be completed, and rest in that. Whereas, in a modern world, I feel like there's always that notion of like, oh, but I'm sure that's possible somehow, if only we try hard enough. Because 100 years ago, it was impossible to speak to somebody in Australia in real time, sitting here in the Netherlands, but now that's possible. And that would have been possible back then if only the technology would have been there. So the sort of the atmosphere was ready to enable that. Nothing has changed in terms of the way the world is, or the universe. The same
natural laws.
Exactly, the same natural laws, cosmic laws. So it would have worked back then. We just didn't know. We hadn't figured it out. So if only we try hard enough, all of these things that we now dream of.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you say that, because, there's this really amazing documentary called Down to Earth. And it's a Dutch couple that goes around the world and they visit all of these different native living tribes, basically the last of their lineages. And in the end, they ask them all the same question. And they basically ask, they ask them the same questions about life and how the world works. And then they all give basically the same answers, even though they all live in completely remote places in different corners of the world. So they have Aboriginals in Australia and some tribes people of South Africa, or in Africa, South America. And then they ask them all the same questions and they give pretty much the same answers. And then they say, in the end, they ask one of these people, like, hey, you guys are all so disconnected from the world and so far disconnected from each other. How can it be that you guys are giving us the same answer? And then it gives like a laughing response of like, oh, that's cute. You think we're the ones who are disconnected, but you're the ones who are disconnected. So this question of it was technically possible to call someone in Australia, but maybe there's a way of living, a way of being human that doesn't involve needing to achieve that, that is happy and fulfilled with what is around them, with seeing the horizon and not knowing what's behind the horizon, and spending more of our human time, our human capacity on contemplation, prayer, connection, ritual, shared presence, and building a deep relationship with where you're rooted and where you live, instead of constantly focusing on this relentless forward progress, this idea of it's never finished and there always needs to be more.
Absolutely, because I think also sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just a thought that came up is that I think that probably leads to greater happiness. Nowadays there's, this is a common phenomenon that a lot of people discuss, that your zone of influence is still very small as a human being, but then the awareness that you have of what's going on in the world and what you could potentially be or should be influencing, given that you now know that this is happening. So wars and all these conflicts around the world, environmental destruction, it creates this constant inattention of knowing about it, feeling responsible to some degree, but also knowing that your zone of influence or your ability to influence all of these different issues that you now have in your awareness is very limited. And that, I think, creates a lot of dissatisfaction, also a lot of almost like freeze responses of people not doing anything at all anymore because they feel like it's completely overwhelming, rather than using the potential that they have to, like you said, contemplate, to sit in prayer, to work for their communities, and to see what can be done day to day, step by step, with the things that are right in front of them.
Yeah, and I think it's something I always want to tell people, because 5-6 years ago, I was a lot talking in the biohacking industry and like giving all these keynotes for these companies. And I was always trying to give them this perspective, like, just so you know, you can do way more than you think. If you change your habits and you change your nutrition and you sleep better, and then you could be so much more productive and so much more successful in life. And that sounded like such a positive message. And now I'm like, wait, let me track back on that and say, it is absolutely normal to feel like you're not achieving enough, because that's how society is communicating to us. Like, and what you said in the beginning about, this is part of our biology, that we're always seeking and always like wanting to go to a place, reach a goal and achieve something. It is part of our nature, but fascinating thing, the ability to not do that could arguably be seen as the only thing that really makes us human, that sets us apart from other humans, And if we are only focused on our survival through our productivity, then we get into a mode of what this philosopher Byung-Chul, which I'm about to read from, calls a naked biological life. So, actually, let me read here a small part of it, which says, so this is the book called Vita Contemplativa from an incredible philosopher, Byung-Chul, and he wrote the book, for example, Burnout Society and The Disappearance of Rituals, like 14 books. They're all little essays. It's pretty dense philosophical stuff, I have to say. It's not an easy read, at least not for me. Maybe that's to do with my brain, but it's like every few sentences I have to sit and go like, oof, yes. So one thing, first I'll read a little bit of the intro. He says, we increasingly resemble the sort of active people who roll as the stones in obedience to the stupidity of the laws of mechanics. Because we look at life exclusively from the perspective of work and performance, we view inactivity as a deficiency that must be overcome as quickly as possible. Human existence is fully absorbed by activity and thereby becomes exploitable. We are losing a sense for the kind of inactivity that is not an incapability, not a refusal, not just the absence of activity, but a capacity in itself. Inactivity has a logic of its own language, temporality, architecture, magnificence, even its own magic. It is not a weakness or defect, but rather an intensity, which is, however, neither seen nor acknowledged in our active and performance-driven society. We cannot access the riches of the realm of inactivity. Inactivity is a radiance within human existence, and today it has paled into an emptiness within activity. So there's this idea that we're only supposed to be inactive to recover,
to become active again.
In order to become active again. But then here it says, a little bit further, it says, inactivity constitutes the human. The inactivity involved in any doing is what makes the doing something genuinely human. Without moments of pause or hesitation, acting deteriorates into blind action and reaction. Without calm, a new barbarism emerges. Silence deepens conversation. Without stillness, there is no music, just sound and noise. Play is the essence of beauty. When life follows the rule of stimulus response, need satisfaction, and goal action, it atrophies into pure survival, naked biological life. But life receives its radiance only from inactivity. And if we lose the ability to be inactive, we begin to resemble machines that must simply function. True life begins when concern for survival for the exigencies of mere life ends. The ultimate purpose of all human endeavor is inactivity. It's a pretty big truth bomb that this guy's dropping here, and very confronting to the way I've been living. And in a very practical sense, so what I was just starting with is like, it's completely normal to feel like you're never doing enough, because that's how the whole system is built. And it is actually a very natural desire to be inactive, to rest, to just stare at the clouds passing by, to just kind of stroll around, to walk without a goal. And everything in this modern life, as Byung-Chul describes, it has an in order to. Everything has a function. Time is a commodity. Every second is like a precious piece of real estate, and it needs to be filled in with the highest possible degree of productivity. And if it's not, we get stressed. And then the last thing I'll say about this that I got from this book is this idea that I've definitely feel inside myself, like I can only rest when it is finished. And then there's a part in this book where he said, on the seventh day, God rested. And I turn it into a little poem that says, on the seventh day, God rested, not because he was tired, but because rest is his essence. He knew that if the universe was purely made of action, it would lack its unified perfection. So God didn't rest on the seventh day because he was tired. He's God. She is God, like he made everything. Why would he need to rest? I'm saying he now, but, God rested because God knew that something is only finished when you rest. And that to me is like a wild and difficult thing to apply, that at the end of the day, I feel like nothing's finished, but then nothing's ever finished. And then you die, and then I go like, oh, but I need to be finished in order to rest. And now I'm trying to flip the script on that and go like, I'm going to rest so that the day is finished. If I stay on my phone, if I stay like with the emails in my head at dinner with the kids, if I, as soon as the kids are in bed, continue finishing a few tasks, then I am sending the signal to myself that nothing is ever finished, because I don't rest.
Yeah, and it's beautifully said. And I think there's a lot of truth in it, and also a lot of truth in these words that you just read. But essentially, like what came up in me is that it's simply pointing, even though it seems like dense matter, but it's simply pointing at a super basic universal law of balance, right? That you can't, and this is also why it's such a hoax that, for example, the economy can grow forever, because that's just not how it works, right? Like energy sort of forms and accumulates and then it disperses. And you can see that in everything. You can see that in clouds and in the seasons and in the way that in the female cycle, you can see it in the way that we need to sleep and be neither sleeping all day nor being wakeful all day makes sense. Like that's just ingrained in, I believe, every single tiniest atom, every single sort of speck that this universe is made of is this act of balance in whichever shape or form. And the fact that we as society reject entire sort of parts of this cycle. So, and this shows up in so many different ways in which we live life. So I just mentioned the female cycle, and I know so many women, for example, that are just like, I don't want to be premenstrual, menstrual. It's just so annoying. And it's so annoying to be a woman because now I can't be productive. I can't exercise in the way that I usually do. And I can't sort of keep up with the men, but that's also because the system is built in a way that expects constant productivity and sort of being at a certain level of performance at all times. But we've created that for ourselves. But also the fact that people are so keen to escape the dark days and the winter season and go to a tropical place so that they don't have to deal with the rainy, short, cold days. These are very surface level things, but I think if you dig a little bit deeper, you can see that we've really, as a society, moved away from embracing that universal law of balance, and we fully reject one side and glorify the other, and get burned out. It's kind of like Icarus flying too close to the sun. Yeah, it's the same thing. Like it has to be somewhere in the middle.
Yeah, and what I just wrote down as a song title of a song I want to write. Het kan niet altijd zomer zijn. It can't always be summer. We can't have eternal summer. And I used to, from the biohacking perspective, people would ask me like, how can I make sure I don't get a winter dip? And I was like, we have light therapy and red light therapy and supplementation and this routine. And I'm like, well, maybe the fucking point is to be tired and to feel your depression and to have a phase in your life where you feel all the things that, let's say you have a summer and you have energy, you can do everything, but you can also cross your boundaries a little bit, Maybe the point is, if you live in a seasonal area, to fully sink in and relax into the lack of energy and recharge in that space. And I think that this idea of 365 days, constant energy, constant productivity, constant output, which is what society expects of us, even though our bodies are tuned to the seasons, is completely ridiculous.
I recently heard somebody say, which I really liked, is that in the summer, the body is awake and the soul is asleep. And this is, of course, a very sort of black and white way of saying it. And then in the winter, the soul is alive, or the soul is awake and the body is asleep.
Yeah.
And I think, it's very black and white. And
was that Ilse that said that?
Actually, I think so. I was trying to track it back.
Yeah.
But I really liked that way of looking at it, and just not looking at it as, for example, you mentioned depression. It doesn't have to be a depressive season. It's just a season of turning inward and focusing on different things.
You're depressed because you need deep rest. I think Vicky told me that last week.
But depression in the way that the word is shaped is also repressing something. So you're something that actually wants to be felt, something that actually wants to be expressed, is not given the space, and that's what makes you depressed. So, for example, that need for rest. So people burn out not because they, in general, can't handle life. They just can't handle the life that. And what I've recently been thinking about a lot is kind of like permission as well, or consent, because I feel like a lot of the life that a lot of elements of the life that we live these days is pushed onto us by society. So we don't even get to choose. And of course, that's just how society evolves. But I've really been contemplating this a lot. It's like so many things. For example, there was a big discussion around 5G, around Corona. So many people were against it, and then there's just nothing you can do, really. It's just going to be implemented. AI is going to be a thing. And
AI is not going away.
No, it's not going. The internet is not going away. But also this, and there's a lot of structures now that are starting to be broken up a little bit, like patriarchy. But so many things are just there without us ever consenting to it. And we just have to survive in a world, or find a way to, work in a world that is not, in many, many ways, not sort of designed to meet the needs of the kind of primal body that we still have.
Yeah, and another big thing, you just talked about the circle of influence and the circle of involvement, is that even our generation, almost 40 years ago, was born with the notion that the world might end, and that we should do something about it. Now imagine that until about less than 100 years ago, no human had ever lived with the faintest notion that we could kill the planet. So millions and millions of years, hundreds and thousands of generations have passed of humans just feeling the earth is our mother. It is the big thing that we live on, and it is always in charge. And then about 100 years ago, it started to change. And now we've grown up with the idea that there's like a narcissistic monkey with a boner, with a boner insecurity issue that can just press a red button and blow the whole thing up. And then we've also been raised with, and I'm only just starting to realize how much of a construct this is, because I thought it was really positive language to be like in education, be like, what's your talent? What's your unique ability? What's your authentic expression? Find your talent, find your passion. You should find your passion so that you can change the world and you can save the world. So it makes you feel like this tiny little speck in the midst of this whole thing, completely atomized. It never says, hey, how can we build a society where we can tackle the issues together? And
again, I think that's about balance. It's because I do really see each and every one of us as puzzle pieces. So people do, because for example, in a corporate environment, exactly. But I think both needs to be sort of made clear to people. Absolutely. It's like, yes, everyone has unique talents, and way back when I still worked in a corporate environment, I always thought it was ridiculous that everyone was, for example, measured against the same standards. It's like, well, but that's not the point. That everyone performs as high as possible on all these super broad standards, because we do need experts in certain fields, and somebody who excels at whatever Excel sheets probably isn't the best negotiator, and that's okay, because we do have different skill sets, but we need to understand how to use those in the greater web of things. So understanding that we're a unique puzzle piece and that we have a lot of unique things to offer within the context of society.
Exactly. You just said, like, hey, we need these kinds of people. We need that kind of contribution. But also the idea that this individualism, like society is atomized. As soon as you can, move out of your parents' house. Otherwise, you're a failure if you live with your parents. Well, I live with my mom. My mom lives right downstairs the studio. Or my mom we live together, you know. We have a much more communal way of living. And I'm starting to see how, you know, move out of your house, have your own apartment, buy your own appliances, buy your own TV, have your own, everything is for your own. And then you're just an individual by yourself, you know.
And that also links to this idea of productivity. So you need to suddenly also own, all these products, these things that are produced, everyone needs to have their own, because you don't want to rely on other people. How annoying would it be if, on one day you want to drill a hole in the wall and then your neighbors aren't home, so you can't borrow their drill. So it also, that whole notion, but that whole notion is also creating all this overproduction, because everyone needs their own everything. It's a total scam.
Yeah, it's a total scam. And I think also the individualism is, of course, a massive driver for the consumption society that we have. Overconsumption, overproduction, and it's destroying a lot. But yeah, people are taught that the human is the highest. And this is sort of the great thing about humanism as a sort of way of thinking, is that it led the world out of the Dark Ages, because it allowed humans to, you know, glorify human capacity and to go, we can solve problems, we can do things. We're not just subject to, you know, the will of some angry god or whatever it is that you believe, you know. But at the same time, if we place the human as the highest being, then we reach this weird sort of schizoic way of looking where, the human is the highest. I can do everything myself. I should do everything myself. You know, basically place ourselves in the place where a god used to be in all of society, whether it's, you know, Christian God or nature gods or spirits or Roman gods, whatever. Every human had this idea of, like, above us in power systemically is the earth and the creator of everything. And we are subject to that. And now it's like the human is the highest thing. And our constant prayer is to be productive, almost, you know, like we pray to our narcissistic, grandiose idea about what a human should be. And our aim to live up to our idea of what we should be is to constantly be productive and basically disregard our body, disregard our strengths, and disregard femininity, the sensitivities of life. And that's also, you just mentioned the cycle. And I just remembered something thinking about school. I used to work in school as a biology teacher. So I also used to teach about sexual education and teach these young women about their cycle. And I realized that I this pissed me off so much, where we were just talking about summer and autumn, you know, and of course a woman goes through those phases once a month. Each of those phases, and it is presented to them as the great downside of being a woman. So like, well, you're growing up now. And then almost all of the girls that I've had in my classes that would share about it, they had some version of, you had your first menstruation, and then some elder, usually a mother or an aunt or a grandmother, would sit them down and be like, well, this is the downside of being a woman. So this idea that we can be constantly productive and have a constant level of output is also part of a hyper-masculinized image of what the world can do. And it's also making men believe, and this is not men against women, because I really feel like this is such a big downside of this discussion, is that when we talk about masculinity and femininity, that the discussion often polarizes men against women. But if femininity is not welcome, right? So just an example from my time as a teacher, a child has menstrual issues, and is, for example, in really bad pain and feels really sick about 10 days out of the month, right? And this is a young 14, 15-year-old girl, and it's just getting started. And then a response of parents and teachers is then to like, shouldn't we see if we can get that fixed? And then they go to a doctor, and the doctor says, well, that's highly unproductive of you. Basically, they don't say it in that way, of course, but that's just the feeling that I got. Like, well, we can put you on this pill, and this pill makes you essentially hormonally more like a man, and we will erase the entire system that naturally is a part of your personhood, your womanhood, your femininity, and let us suppress that so you don't have to miss fucking gym class 3 times out of the month, And I really got this feeling of like, how dare you be unproductive by being a woman, naturally going through the phases of her life and of her body. We can't have that. Take this pill and go back and make your tests,
The interesting thing is that you're not necessarily even unproductive, because a cycle shouldn't be. This is another sign of imbalance if it's actually so painful and knocking you out.
And that was exactly my point.
But because if you really look at it, brain chemistry really shifts insanely during these different phases of the cycle, giving you different superpowers if you want to look at it that way. So there's some moments where you are, for example, more eloquent, more communicative, and more outgoing, and then other times when you're naturally, and I'm just simplifying, there's a lot to it, and it's really worth diving into if that's something that interests you. But these different phases, just like the different seasons in the world around us, they come with different perks, but also different downsides if you want to look at it like that, if you want to sort of categorize. But it's just different shades or different expressions of the same thing. So the universe, the body, nature expresses itself in different ways in these cycles, and there's different things to enjoy, different whatever. If you look at what grows in nature, there's different things to eat, there's different things to harvest, different things to do, depending on what the environment looks like around you in these different seasons. And the same goes for your body. There's just different things that you're good at, or that you should probably refrain from in certain seasons, but by suppressing all of it. And then this reminds me of it's a completely different context, but Brené Brown has this beautiful TED talk about emotions, where she says you can selectively numb, but we're collectively numbing.
Yeah, we can do that.
We can do that. We're really good at it. But basically, by numbing the one, for example, numbing feelings of depressions, feeling of being low, feelings of needing a rest, needing a break, you're also to some degree numbing the ups, the joys, and that's what the pill does essentially. Yeah,
and what's really interesting is that I was just in a retreat 2 weeks ago. This theme came up, and I said something to the point of women are, well, I always say, men and women both embody femininity and masculinity. Whenever you talk about this topic, people tend to polarize it so quickly, but we are humans and we are both made out of pretty much equal parts feminine and masculine. Human men and women are extremely alike if you compare to, spiders or something, as a biologist, I think of that stuff. So, yes, women can do just about anything that men can do, and men can do just about anything that women can do. We are mostly the same. But and then I said, but women are, if you would want to categorize it, are on average a little bit more sensitive. And people were responding like I was making an insult. And then I realized, and this also came up in my biohacking talks, if we talk about negative states or negative emotions, people would place sensitivity in the box of being something negative. But to me, it's well, if we have one half of civilization who is male and usually more masculine oriented out of those two poles, and they have a little bit of a higher capacity to disregard their sensitivities and work despite them, or work really hard towards a goal, or activate towards a goal, which is a tendency. It's not something that men do and women can't. But if you look around, you can see that usually men are a little bit more capable of taking on a certain type of stress, cross their own boundaries to get to a certain goal. And if half of the population is a little bit better at that, wouldn't it just make sense that the other half of the population is a little bit better at being sensitive to that boundary crossing, so that we can balance each other out, And then to see that as something negative already means that this hyper-masculinized society where nobody, and it's not just about suppressing women, because I have also learned I'm not supposed to be sensitive. So by suppressing femininity as a whole in a way, and only welcoming productivity, work, action, goal orientation, nobody really has access to their sensitivity. And this is like such a grateful, huge lesson that I'm getting from living with you, is that if you go through your cycle, it's also an invitation to feel inside me. And especially in this last year where our life has been super intense and I felt quite overworked in many ways, that you have a much wiser relationship with your body and you are like role modeling that towards me. Yeah, so it's like, hey, it's almost like men and women, we can use each other's, we can use each other's help and we can lend each other a hand. So, I mean, I don't want to take this all the way into this feminine, masculine discussion because it's always, there's always so much to it. But I just feel like it is something that gets to be honored. The fact that we have changing bodies and that we cannot force ourselves. We're not machines.
But I think this is just another example of this imbalance and just moving towards, because there's also people that are stuck in their sensitivities and can't really sort of face the intensity of life sometimes. Yeah. And one beautiful teacher for me in all of this, because I'm a birth worker as well, so I work as a birth doula, and to me, giving birth is like the ultimate expression of that balance, because it's literally the most intense, also sometimes boundary crossing thing you can undergo physically. But at the same time, like a baby doesn't just come out in like one go. It's not just like, baby's out. But the body itself like really paces it beautifully. So every contraction pushes the baby a little bit further down the birth canal, and then there comes a moment of rest, and then the baby sort of retreats a little bit again, but not as far back as it was before, but just a little bit to really help the tissue stretch and open up. And a woman needs to be both in her sensitivity and in her power to be able to navigate that process and to sort of use her strength to push or to be with the intensity of the process, but at the same time also to listen to her body and to feel in the breaks like, oh, maybe I should change position. Maybe something else is needed now. Maybe I do need assistance. So I think in general, just this whole idea that we've always been thinking of these as opposites that we need to gravitate towards is just silly, because yes, of course you have a certain tendency, and there's also women that are more male oriented potentially, and men that are more female oriented. But for whoever you are, I think it's essentially all about coming back to that balance and really understanding when to use what, and sort of taking one whole side of the equation out of your system because you think it's lesser than the other is also robbing you of your full potential.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is that you can only balance something out and take responsibility of a process that you are aware of. And I think that this is, as you were saying that, I just realized like every human being has been born out of that process of giving birth, out of this like feeling, taking action, moving, and yet we live our lives sort of unaware of it. That's how life goes. The way that birth happens is, and of course not everybody has been born in that exact way, but even deciding for a C-section, for example, would still be a part of that. It's like feeling, giving, taking, balancing. And then I just thought of this, there's this very well-known analogy of a fish, an older fish, and he's swimming through the water, and these younger fish, they pass him and they go like, the water's nice today, isn't it? And the older fish just goes, what do you mean water? Right? Because a fish doesn't know it's living in water. It's living in this medium. And I'm starting to realize that this, the productivity addiction, or the productivity cult almost, the religion of productivity, that it is a construct. I've so identified with this idea of achieving and reaching and setting goals and defining myself. Like people used to ask me, hey, how are you doing? And then I would give them a list of the things I'd achieved and the things I'd finished in the day. Yeah, I'm doing well. I finished this and that and such and so. And then somebody reflected it back to me. They were like, oh yeah, that's the things you did. But how do you feel? And I was like, I just told you I feel great because I finished all those things, and this is really something I feel like I'm sort of like waking up to. It's like almost like being caught in a nightmare for a very long time, and now starting to see like, oh shit, every part of my life has become defined by productivity. And the interesting thing is that becoming a parent has made that stronger to a degree, but also confronts me with it to a higher degree, because now I'm like, now it really matters. We've got kids, we have 3 kids, a house, we've both got businesses, people that look to us, teams and a community and like all of this stuff, a lot of responsibilities. And at the same time, there's just these little beings that don't care what you do or what you've achieved or whether you've finished your emails. They just want to cuddle and play and poop on the floor in our case, sadly. And all they want is our presence, So I think that's also created this polarity within myself of realizing like, oh yeah, this is such a fallacy. And I used to call it male provider syndrome, but I don't think it's male. I think it's just provider syndrome, where you're like, oh, I have these kids. I want them to have a good life and to be able to spend time with them. So I must have certain things in place in order to be able to do that. But then I find it so important that I get stuck in doing the things in order to spend time with them. But I always stick in the in order to and never, not never, but not as much as I want or could in the actual spending time and sharing presence. And I think in the world now, in the timeline of history, this might be the most important moment to realize this, because everything that's productive is going to be taken over by AI anyway, And so for me, it's like, well, there's this massive tidal wave of AI coming, and we have no idea how it's going to influence us, but there's a good chance that life is going to change no matter what. And so what are the things that I find important no matter what? And, answering those 3 or 4 extra emails in a day isn't going to count as much as spending that same 15 minutes on holding full presence with each other or with our kids or with friends, or just, making music, being unproductive. So, okay, I want to make it a little bit more practical. What are some things that you are applying to find that balance a little bit more, to sort of recover from the production-oriented identification of life?
That's a good question. I'm still struggling with it because I feel it's very deeply ingrained in me. I think one thing that I quickly just wanted to touch upon what we mentioned earlier is that to me, and it links to like our earlier discussion, but also to this, for me is really sitting in ceremony. And what of course it's my work, but also what I generally love about working with ceremonial settings, but also working with psychedelics, is that I feel like they really have this ability, and we've really lost that a lot in our modern society, is to humble us. And birth is similar, which is also, I guess, why I'm so drawn to it. Because both of these processes of being in a psychedelic journey or in a ritual, or giving birth, really makes us aware of how little control we actually have. And through that, I think that whole, what we mentioned at the beginning, this whole idea of having to get to the next thing, having to be productive, having to figure it all out, falls away to a certain degree. Because by humbling ourselves back into the place that we should take as humans, and really seeing that there's greater forces at play, and there's a lot of things we don't understand, making space for the mystery of life, and these cosmic laws that influence us no matter what we do, to me has a huge humbling effect. And sitting in ceremony and really contemplating, coming back to myself and being humbled through these, in my case, often substances, really helps me to sort of come back to the essentials of life. And there's always a part in every single ritual that I do, in every single ceremony that I sit in, that guides me back to this place of like, what are the essentials? The essentials is that I spend time with my family, that I'm present with my children, that I also just judge my day not just by how much I've finished, but how much I've enjoyed it, how much fun I've had. And that I also get to simply, because in these states, you can also just get so lost in something that you actually enjoy. And for me, but that's also, for example, making music. Sometimes I have this idea, for example, that, I need to finish all these things in order to be able to do something that I really enjoy. I think the only thing I sometimes allow myself to do before I get to work is to go to the gym, but that's also productive, so that I stay healthy, for example.
To do your favorite thing first.
Yeah, but I think that's something that I've really come to learn, is that I don't need anyone's permission, especially not my own, to enjoy myself. That should be just as high on my to-do list as getting all the stuff done that I want to do.
Yeah, it's kind of the question of like, where do you place the gravity, the weight, the center orientation of your life? So is it like being productive and achieving things is in the center, and then, or the highest place, and then everything you do basically orients towards that? It's like your North Star. This is how I've been living. If I look honestly, the last few years. And I mean, there's good reason for it. Lots going on and everybody gets into that trap. So it's not like I'm trying to judge myself harshly for it or anything.
Well, it also got you somewhere.
It got me a lot of amazing things, absolutely. But now it's not that I need to stop doing all those things. It is, what is the center point of orientation in my life? What is the gravity of my life? So for example, and I saw this really confronting quote that says, how we live our days is how we spend our days is how we live our life.
It's basically another version of what you always used to say. It's like, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes, this is true. But I like this idea that you have how we spend our days, which is moment to moment, is how we live our life. And if you imagine at the end of your life, on your deathbed, your children have made a documentary about your life, and it looks back and it's like, wow, we just took the average of your days and we turned it into a documentary of your life. And then look at your glorious life. And it's just me behind a laptop on my phone. Oh, fuck, one more. Oh, I forgot this on my to-do list. So I'm like, okay, you know what? So that's a very interesting, confronting one. So for example, in the morning is my highest quality time. I'm like clear, I'm focused, I have insights, and then I'm like, well, I should totally harvest that. I should use that. That's now a commodity, that ideal state that I'm in, and I need to invest that into doing the things that are productively most important. Well, if I look at what's best for me, it is meditating, and after meditation, breathwork and meditation, just making some music, just grabbing a random instrument and playing on it, singing a song that I like, going for a walk, a stroll, a walk without a goal. Those are the things that really charge me up. And the funny thing is, if I prioritize that, I feel so nourished at a deep level that afterwards, my whole distance between all this productivity and this compulsion of productivity which I think is a really good word, the compulsion. There's nothing wrong with productivity. The issue is with the compulsion to be productive, like this forceful, I have to do this. And then, of course, at the end of the day,
productivity can be really intrinsically motivated.
It's really amazing. Yeah. So it's the compulsion that makes it problematic. And then I've already done the things that are most important to me, like just have a moment to call on my wife and to sing a song and to hang with the kids and then spend kind of like my most valuable brain energy hours on that. It is a message to myself that is what life is about, and the rest, everything that does have an in order to, should have the in order to give me the good life. So what is the good life, and am I doing the things instead of living the good life, or am I doing all of those productive things in order to support my good life? And defining a good life is very important. And as my business coach Tibor always says, living the good life is about knowing what is enough. And knowing what is enough is, of course, one of the most difficult things in my mind sometimes, because I'm like, well, can I rest now? Have I done enough? Well, I don't have any more time. Yeah, but still, there might be. What if I quickly on the toilet still grab my phone and do like answer a message or whatever? So that's a big thing for me, just really acting in a way. So how do I spend my day? Well, I spent my day by giving attention to the most important things first that I want to place on the highest throne of value, and making sure that it's something that I decide to be important for me. And then I want to relate to the ceremony thing that you just said. A lot of people ask like, oh, but why do you have to go to ceremony all the time? And I don't. And that is the fucking point, right? The whole point is that I do not have to go. And that almost everything in ceremony is superfluous. And this is something that I really love. I'll read one more quote from this book. So it says, "We owe true happiness to the useless and purposeless, to what is intentionally convoluted, what is unproductive, indirect, exuberant, superfluous, to beautiful forms and gestures that have no use and serve no purpose. Unlike walking to a destination, running somewhere, or marching, taking a leisurely stroll is a luxury. Ceremonious inactivity means we do something, but to no end. This to no end, this freedom from purpose and usefulness, is the essential core of inactivity and the basic formula for happiness." So the question is, how much do I need to do to be productive in order to be able to have this uselessness of just like sitting and watching a cloud evaporate in the sky, or watching, just, and now you see it more with autumn, because we're recording this in autumn, is that I see people out of my window strolling around, just kind of like kicking leaves around because it feels nice. And I'm like, yeah, those are the things that we're forgetting, And when I sit in ceremony, when I used to go to ceremony, I'd be like, I want to work on this, and I want to heal that, I want to have insights on that. And now when I go, I just want to be a part of this beautiful form with all these superfluous, unnecessary things, like beautiful candles and beautiful incense, and everybody dresses up nicely, and we say very, very kind of like fancy formalities. We say like aho, and we say my intention is this, and everything comes with a level of presence that dissolves it from normal time. The main thing that people say out of our breathing sessions, our ceremony, our singing circles, like all the work we do, is that they lose track of time. And they come and they go like, do I have 2.5 hours to spend on a Friday night on a singing circle? That seems very unproductive. And then they go and they say like, oh, I felt like I had a week of holiday and I was just bathing in all of this wonderful energy and I feel totally recharged, And it's a bit sad that in society we only really do real ceremony for weddings and for funerals, And think back to a funeral. Maybe you were checking your clock, but if you really cared about the event and really cared about the person, there's a good chance that it takes place in a sort of eternity beyond time, where time isn't a resource that's ticking away and disappearing every time you don't fill it in with something useful. So to me, that's really what ceremony has been transforming into, far beyond the, oh, I want to heal or I want to improve this or that. It's just really about being in that time of non-time where everything is just a luxury, a bonus,
What I'm also really trying to do actively right now is to, first of all, or inactively, to do one thing at a time. So for example, if I decide to go, so in the past I would go for a walk and then be like, oh, but there's this audiobook that I wanted to listen to, or that and of course I also want to listen to it. And if I really genuinely feel like, oh, that would be nice right now, I still do it. But I would almost try and sort of layer tasks and be like, okay, I want to go for a walk so that I feel like I've moved enough today. But then I also want to listen to this book and my time is limited. So I'm going to do both of it at the same time. And in that sense, I'm not really paying attention to, because I'm still, navigating the world. So sometimes I miss what I'm listening to. And then I'm also not really fully enjoying the surroundings because I'm listening to this audiobook. So that I've really stopped doing, or at least I try and consciously check in with myself. Like, what do I actually want to do? Do I want to combine these activities? And also because we have very limited time to work, because we spend a lot of time with the kids. And we don't have, just the classic 9-to-5 workday every day. And the times that we do have when the kids are, with other caretakers, we also use to, for example, go to the gym and do some other things for ourselves that we would otherwise not have time for. So I always used to feel like, oh, this time is so limited. I need to make the most of it. I need to be as productive as possible. And then recently, I've just really actively decided to take some of that time to do something that I just want to do. So, for example, like making the house a little bit more beautiful. Like I had a vision for a certain thing that I wanted to do. And of course, it's completely pointless because it's not like from a productivity mindset, because it doesn't matter whether this wall is now painted and has a new picture on it or not. Or it doesn't really matter whether, these plants have now been repotted. I don't need to do that right now. I should probably rather do my work. But I've actively taken chunks out of that limited time that I have in order to do these kinds of things, which nourish a different part of myself. Of, for example, knowing that, the house is just more of our sanctuary, and it's just even just aesthetically pleasing to me when I'm at home, and that sort of feeds a different. I think the way I'm seeing it is that productivity, and I like being productive. I really enjoy my work. I enjoy working in general. I've always been a complete nerd. So it's also not something that I want to push out of my life to a huge degree, because I also get a lot out of doing what I do. But I want to, and that's how I see it now, I nourish different parts of myself. And there's certain parts of myself that simply aren't nourished by my work and aren't nourished by productivity. So I try and sort of integrate elements into my day-to-day life that nourish these other parts.
And I think, so what to me really helped to see that distinction is that Byung-Chul, he calls it basically, it is a way of, you can do something performative and you can do something contemplative. So you see this wall that's just white and boring, and you go like, oh, I want this to be more beautiful. Then you can be like, okay, what is the most efficient way to make this thing as beautiful as possible? Right? And then you go through a series of like, you can ask GPT, like, what's the fastest way to make this thing? And you're like constantly racing to get it finished. And then you're like, look, I performed this wall and look how beautiful it is. I finished it and I did the task, and I did it in the least amount of time. And I did it with this level of efficiency. And that's also what used to give me stress about doing chores around the house, because like fixing little things, and I love fixing stuff. Like I love having my tool belt on and going around and fixing things. But I spent the whole day trying to finish all my tasks on my computer and all the stuff that I need to do. And by the way, I just want to say that people who follow our work, when you see us, we are doing the thing that it's about, right? So when I'm running a retreat, I am 100% spending every second doing what I love. When we are in ceremony and we're making music and we're playing all these songs, and you're like, that is, yes, that we do live life on our own terms, and we have an incredible blessing that we are able to. But people only see us in that role, and I often tell people, you don't see how much it takes to be able to have those moments in the retreats and the events, to be able to really fully do what we love and what we have, do our service and to express ourselves in that way. And it does make me very happy, and it does make me very fulfilled. That's absolutely true. But it's good to also understand that if you see someone else who seems to be living their dream life, they still have to, mop the floor and pay their taxes and, feed their kids, So it's good to just say that some people might be thinking, what are you talking about? You only do what you love. Well, I do what I love, and then I do all the work that needs to be done in order to do the work that I love, So I think that's an important thing. But when I see you beautify this wall in the house, for example, it is a contemplation. You're like slowing down. You're just taking time to sit and stare at it and to imagine what it could be. And then you go to the kringloop, to the thrift store, and you walk around, and it's like this very slow pace, like, oh, maybe I'll use this frame. Oh, look, there's a treasure there. Oh, this one maybe. And it's also slow, it doesn't have like this fastest route towards the end. And this is also what I have now when I hang a new plant on the wall, or when I go and do a chore. It's not like, oh shit, this thing is still on my list and I have to do it. But I'm just going to sit there and contemplate and just look at this thing of like, what a fascinating thing to spend my time on. How can I enjoy, because I love working with my hands, and I don't even feel my hands if I'm rushing to kind of like perform the task and optimize the performance. And this is the interesting thing. I used to promote the idea of tracking your sleep in order to optimize it. And then looking back, I would like wake up, and the first thing I would do is to go, oh, I was just sleeping. How well did I perform at sleep? And I said that every day, and I never realized how silly that is. It's like even sleep has become a performance. And the issue is that we believe that it leads to more freedom. While true freedom is just, like gardening without having to garden in order to whatever.
I think that also ties into that sensitivity aspect, is that, you could just as well just tap into your body and feel like, hey, how rested do I feel? Like you don't necessarily, and not that it doesn't, I've definitely gotten something easy out of tracking my sleep and understanding which habits benefited and not. But looking back at it now, I think I could have also just figured that out by really tuning in with how I feel.
Yeah, but again, it's a balance thing, because it's like I was really excited and curious to learn more about how sleep works. And I did, and I learned a lot, and it really improved my sleep, and it really helped me in so many ways. And that's amazing. And then go like, well, if I already got this far, what else can I do? And this, I just want to read one more part of this book, because I think this is a really important thing. It says, because this is about it's not about, like, there's nothing wrong with performing again, but it's about the pressure to perform, or the compulsion to perform. And here it says, the subtle pressure to perform is interpreted as an expansion of freedom with disastrous consequences. Believing that we are realizing ourselves, we voluntarily exploit ourselves. And this is a pretty big one. That the idea of self-realization, oh, but you are becoming a success, and you are achieving your goals, and you are being great. Oh, yay, applause. And you get all this applause and all these likes on social media. Where actually, this is like the highest, in this book, it's described as the highest form of slavery. That you don't even realize that you kind of voluntarily exploit yourself. And then it says, we worship the cult of the self, in which each is his own priest. The pressure to be authentic is alien to mass society. Mass society was dominated by mass media, but the age of digital media does not suppress the individual's ability to speak. Quite the contrary. Everyone is now a producer and a broadcaster, like us on this podcast. Everyone is producing themselves, and we become intoxicated with the bewildering amount of communication that is produced. So I would say that a lot of the stuff that he writes in this book is very succinct, very, very strong. And the thing that I keep thinking about is, if everyone is racing ahead, if more and more people are, and even the boundaries in the Corona times between being at work and being at home have completely faded. It is so completely normal to just be on a call on a random moment in your workday, So for me, I've been practicing at the end of my workday, which is usually 5 o'clock, I put my phone away. Like, of course, I can put it on airplane mode in my pocket, but I want the signal to be out of my system. I was like, away, gone. I am now unreachable by the world until tomorrow morning. And I don't always stick to it, but it's having that choice, that moment of like, from now on, my store is closed, I'm no longer available, no longer reachable, and,
But I think it takes a certain amount of courage, because the image that comes up in me there is that, in like tests in school back then, if you're the only one who's not having like a cheat sheet with you, because you follow some internal compass of what's right and what's not, or because you don't want to get caught, or whatever reason you might have, then you're the one who's in the end maybe the one who gets left behind, right? Because you didn't follow sort of the way that everyone else was doing it, even if you felt like that was wrong or that wasn't serving.
Yes.
That wasn't the point. Because of course, in essence, like, you learn something so that you can apply it in life, not so that you can perform well at a test. But I think that's always a bit of the tension field there, is that everyone else around you, and in that way, it, I think, needs to also, just like with everything, be a collective, and it's going to be slow because of that, a slow collective movement away from that sort of notion of productivity, or placing productivity at the highest. But at the same time, it's so difficult because it needs some people that choose to step out first and that say like, hey, everyone else is doing this, and I might be at a disadvantage if I stop living in this way, but somebody has to do it.
Yeah, it's so funny you said it, because the first time last week I had this really clear insight. It's like, okay, at the end of the day, by the end of my work day, I'm going to turn my phone off and just be away until tomorrow morning. And then after I do my meditation and maybe my workout or making some music, then I'll look at my phone. And the whole time I was like, am I going to get away with this? Is this going to be okay? And the next morning I was like mind blown that nothing really important happened in that time. And I opened my phone. It's like, oh, like nothing, like there was absolutely no point in being on my phone in that time, or being available or reachable. So it felt like adventurous, to be like, this is my boundary, this time is to me. And then I was like, wow, this ocean of time. And it was just a mindset shift, because the phone is still there, and before I would just try to fill every moment with something like productive.
That's a luxury, because I think, let's say you're an Uber driver, for example, right? Then you have to be constantly on it. You constantly have to be monitoring. Is there a new ride that's coming in? Oh yeah, of course. But I'm just trying to it's the first example that came up in me. But there are in a modern life so many time-sensitive jobs where people don't really get the choice to step out so much, or if they do, they're at a disadvantage. And in the work that we do, if for example we say like, hey, we respond within a week, which would feel really good to me if I didn't have this idea of like, oh, I need to respond within 24 hours to somebody asking anything of me. Because that's kind of like the societal norm, then, maybe some opportunities will move because they're like, hey, they're not getting back to me. Yeah. I'm going to ask somebody else. So it is, real to a greater or lesser extent for most people, I suppose. But I think so it can only happen in a collective way, that we move away from this, this way of living, but it needs some courageous pioneers who are like, fuck it, I'm just not going to do this anymore.
Because I just realized like my next comfort zone challenge could be to just be like, I answer on Monday. Mm-hmm. That's the moment. If you email me on Tuesday, you have 6 days to wait. Mm-hmm. And it's so interesting that you say that, because in my mind it's always like, oh, but I'm so afraid I will insult people. They'll think I'm not working hard enough. They think I do bad service, bad customer service, whatever it is, But now that you said that, I'm like, but actually, I might be a role model of a healthy boundary, and I might inspire someone else to be like, you know what, that's a good idea. I'm also just going to do one day, and then just slow things down. Okay, I'm going to, I was caught catching a fly that passed by.
Were you fast enough?
I was very successful and productive at it. So I'm going to also respect our time, because it's been about an hour. And we could talk about all of these things for a very long time. I think we covered a lot of fascinating things. If you are listening to us, which you are, if you hear me saying this, whoa, that's stupid. Then please do let us know your thoughts. And also, if there's any part of this conversation or anything our work relates to you would like us to speak to, then please do. This podcast is also very much a contemplation. We don't have big goals or business models in mind with it. We just felt like creating a container where we share our ideas around our work and for you to more deeply connect with us in a very light conversational way. So if you have any themes, any questions you would like us to speak to, then please do.
It's not like we're the experts, though. Just our contemplation.
This is our contemplation. Yeah. We could also call the podcast Our Contemplation. Nah, it's lame.
What do you think?
Nah, we will keep stumbling along the universe. Unless you think it's better if we do something different, because we will always only do what people think of us. Just kidding. Anyway, any last words, Anna?
No, I'm just going to take a rest now.
All right, let's chill out. Bye-bye, everyone. You're supposed to say bye-bye.
Bye.